My parents spent $2,800 on my card for my sister's cruise. You don't need it, Mom said. I smiled. Enjoy it. While they were away, I sold the house they lived in. When they got back, 25 missed calls. The notification came in at 2:14 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I was eating a sandwich at my desk, sourdough, turkey, the good mustard, when my phone buzzed and the Chase app pushed an alert that made me set down my food very slowly and very carefully. The way you set things down when your hands have suddenly stopped working right. Transaction alert, Caribbean Cruise Lines, 10,847. I sat there for a moment, just sat there. The air in my apartment felt different, thicker, the kind of thick that presses on your ears. I opened the app, confirmed it, stared at the merchant name until the letters stopped making sense, which took about 4 seconds. Then I closed the app, reopened it, and stared again. Caribbean Cruise Lines, $10,800.47. My Visa, my credit, the card I kept for emergencies and large planned purchases, the card I had never, not once, given to anyone. My first thought, and I am embarrassed by this, genuinely embarrassed because it tells you everything about how conditioned I had become, was that I needed to figure out how to explain this to my mother without upsetting her. That thought lasted about 6 seconds before my brain caught up with my nervous system. I called the card company first, spoke with a representative named Marcus who confirmed the charge had gone through at 11:48 that morning, originating from a Caribbean Cruise Lines booking portal, and that the billing address used was my address. Not my apartment address, but the house on Maple Drive, my property, the house where my family lived. Marcus walked me through the dispute process. I took notes. I thanked him. I hung up and sat in the specific silence that falls over a room when you realize you already know exactly what happened and exactly who did it, and the only question left is what you're going to do about it. My mother called 40 minutes later. She had a way of timing things that always suggested she knew more than she let on. Jessica, warm, comfortable, the voice she used when she wanted something or had already taken it. Mom, I kept my voice even, steady. I had learned that from her, actually. I need to talk to you about something. A pause, and then, and this is the part I still think about, she didn't lower her voice. She didn't stumble. She said it the way you announce a mild change of plans. I used your Visa for something, for Brittany. I looked at my phone screen, the number, $10,800.47. Mom, that's my card. I know, honey, but your sister is going through something real. The breakup hit her harder than you understand. Dr. Renata, her therapist. Actually, she's not seeing Dr. Renata anymore, but before, Dr. Renata said she needed to process in a new environment. She paused. I could hear her settling into something, shifting her weight. A cruise came up, an incredible deal. 12 days, the Caribbean. $10,000 is not a deal, Mom. It was a suite with a balcony. She said this like it settled the matter. I set my sandwich in the trash. I wasn't going to finish it. She came over that evening. I don't know why I let her, except that I do know why. I had been letting her come over and say things and take things my entire adult life, and the habit of it was its own kind of gravity. She sat in my dining chair, not the guest chair, mine, the one I always sat in. She sat in it like it belonged to her, crossed her ankles, and looked at me with an expression that I can only describe as magnanimous, like she was doing me a favor by explaining my own life to me. Brittany needed this. The breakup was traumatic for her. The breakup. I want to be precise about the breakup because it matters. Brittany, my sister, who was 28 years old and had not held a job for longer than 4 months consecutively since she was 22, had been dating a man named Derek for about 8 months. Derek had, at some point in month 7, gently suggested that Brittany might want to think about pursuing some form of employment. Brittany had taken this as a fundamental betrayal of her personhood and ended the relationship. That was 3 months ago. The trauma of being asked to participate in society was apparently still reverberating. Mom, I said carefully, that's fraud. She laughed. She actually laughed. A short, bright little sound like I'd made a joke. Don't be dramatic. We're family. My father, my mother, my sister, all 3 of them. On my card, 12 days at sea, a balcony suite, lobster dinners and champagne and pool days, presumably. Not even an invitation, not a phone call, not a text that said, hey, would you want to come? Just taken, assumed, filed under Jessica won't mind. I looked at her smirk one more time. That particular smirk, the one that meant she'd already decided how this conversation ended and was simply waiting for me to catch up. Enjoy it, I said. She patted my hand, slowly, deliberately, the way you pat a pet. I knew you'd understand. The door closed behind her. I opened my laptop. Here's what they didn't know. What none of them had ever thought to know. Because when you've been the family's backstop for long enough, people stop looking at what's actually underneath them. They just assume the floor will hold. 3 years earlier, at 27, I had bought a house. The house on Maple Drive. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, decent neighborhood, mature trees in the backyard, original hardwood under carpet in 2 of the rooms. I paid $247,000 for it, which was a stretch at the time, but made sense as an investment, and I'd put in another $18,000 over the following 2 years in repairs and improvements. New water heater, new roof, kitchen appliances, bathroom retiling. 6 months after I bought it, my parents' lease fell through. The landlord sold the building. They had 30 days and nowhere obvious to go. I said they could stay at Maple Drive temporarily while they sorted something out. I said temporarily. I did not say 3 years. I did not say rent-free. I said temporarily, and then I didn't enforce it. And then Brittany moved in after the job at a clothing boutique situation dissolved. And then it was 3 3 people in my house, none of them paying anything, and somehow I had become the villain every time I raised the subject. There was no lease, no rental agreement, no document of any kind. That had felt like a kindness at the time. It had not been a kindness. It had been, I understood now, an oversight so significant it had its own gravitational field. I covered the water heater when it failed, $400. I covered the roof, $8,200. I covered Christmas for 3 years running. Grocery emergencies that somehow never prevented anyone from posting photos of steakhouse dinners and spa days, and a very cute set of matching luggage that Brittany had bought for what turned out to be my cruise. I had stopped itemizing after about $40,000. The number had gotten too large, and the act of counting had become its own kind of grief. And now, $10 to $800 more. For a vacation I wasn't invited to. I sat at my laptop for a long time that night, just thinking. There's a version of this story where I cried, and I want to be honest. My eyes got hot at one point, that specific pressure that happens right before, but I didn't. What I felt instead was something quieter and colder and much more clarifying. I felt for the first time in a long time like I could see exactly where I was and exactly what needed to happen. I called Patricia Hughes at 9:07 the next morning. Patricia had been my real estate agent when I bought Maple Drive. She was 53, 26 years in residential real estate, the kind of woman who wore blazers in a color she described as commitment red, and who had told me at closing to call her the day I was ready to sell. She had been specific about that. The day you're ready, she'd said, not if, the day. The house on Maple Drive, I said. How fast can you sell it? There was a pause, and then she said something I had not expected. I've been waiting 3 years for this call. I told her about the occupants. She told me that was a detail, not an obstacle. She had a contact, Gerald Marsh, a local investor who bought occupied properties, handled the transition himself, didn't require the seller to manage the process. Gerald's offer came in 18 hours later. Cash, $265,000, 7-day close. I sat with it for about 40 minutes, running numbers. The net after Patricia's commission and closing costs would land around $240,000. The house had appreciated well. The improvements had done their job. 3 years of free housing and $40,000 in covered expenses, and now $10,800 on my credit card. And I was going to walk away with $240,000 in cash, and a story I would tell for the rest of my life. I signed the documents that afternoon. There was one more thing I found, and this is the part that still makes my hands go cold when I think about it. While I was reviewing the property file, pulling documents together for the sale, I found something in the online management portal I used for the property. A form, a residency declaration. Someone had uploaded it. The form was partially filled out, in my mother's name, asserting long-term occupancy and establishing a claim to residential rights. She had been trying to document herself into legal standing in my house. I screenshot the form, emailed it to my attorney, David Coe, family and property law, 12 years practicing, the most quietly devastating communicator I have ever met, and I kept moving. They left for the cruise on a Thursday. I know this because my mother sent me a photo from the airport, all 3 of them in the terminal, matching luggage stacked behind them, Brittany in sunglasses that I would later estimate cost around $400. The caption said, "Finally getting away. So needed this." The luggage, I noted, was the same set Brittany had posted about buying 2 months earlier. I had not bought her that luggage. Someone had, though. I said nothing. I sent back a single thumbs up. Day 3, Mom sent a deck photo. All 3 of them. Champagne glasses raised, ocean behind them, the sky that specific blue that only exists on Caribbean cruises and screensavers. Family vacation finally. Thanks for making dreams come true. I screenshot it, filed it in a folder I had labeled, with no drama whatsoever. Evidence. Day 5, Brittany by the pool. Designer bikini I did not recognize. Living my best life. She had 847 people watching her stories at that point. I was one of them. Day 7, lobster dinner, white tablecloth, what appeared to be a very nice Bordeaux. Eating like royalty tonight. Royalty. On my card. The sale closed on day 6. Gerald's team moved quickly. The locks were changed that afternoon. A notice was posted on the front door as required. Property under new ownership. Current occupants have 30 days to vacate per state law. I turned my phone off Saturday night, got into bed at 9:30, read 40 pages of a novel I had been meaning to get to for months, fell asleep by 10:15, slept, as I believe I described it in the text I sent later, like a corpse. Sunday morning, I made eggs Benedict from scratch. Real hollandaise, double boiler, constant whisking, the kind that takes patience and a good wrist. Good coffee from the bag I'd been saving. Fresh orange juice. I ate at my kitchen table with the window open and the Sunday quiet coming in off the street, and I did not check my phone until 11 a.m. 25 missed calls, 23 voicemails. I poured a second cup of coffee and I sat down and I listened to every single one of them in order. 8:47 p.m. My mother, clipped, confused, but not yet alarmed. The door won't open. Call me back. 8:52 p.m. My mother, slightly higher register. Jessica, there's some kind of notice on the door. About a sale. This is obviously a mistake. Call me. 9:15 p.m. My father, soft as always. Lost as always. He had always been the collateral presence in these situations. The man who stood in the background of scenes that my mother created and told himself that wasn't the same as participating. His voice on the message sounded older than I'd remembered it. "Honey, your mother's very upset. We're at the neighbors. Can you call us back when you get a chance?" Then came what I can only describe as the escalation. 9:41 p.m. My mother, no longer clipped, no longer longer confused, a sound I had not heard from her in decades, a kind of undone quality, like something structural inside her had given way. She said my name 3 times. Then she said, "What have you done?" And the question trembled in the middle of it in a way that told me she had already figured out the answer. 10:02 p.m. My mother again, now cycling back through something harder. Anger landing on top of fear, the way it always did with her. She mentioned lawyers. She mentioned my name being all over this. She said the word fraud, which I noted with a particular kind of satisfaction, given our last conversation. 10:29 p.m. My father, second message. He didn't say much. He said they had called a hotel. He said he hoped I was okay. He said, "I don't understand what's happening, Jessica." He sounded like a man standing in a house he'd thought was stable watching the floor dissolve, and I felt something for him in that moment. Not regret, but something adjacent to it. Grief, maybe. For the father he could have been if he had ever once stood between me and the way things were. He hadn't. That was the whole of it. Brittany left 2 messages. First one, "You're a monster, Jessica. You're an actual monster. We had nowhere to go. Do you understand that? We got off a boat and we had nowhere to go. You are a monster and I will never forgive you for this. Never." The second one came 3 hours later. At 1:17 in the morning. Her voice was smaller by then, scraped out. "I don't have anywhere to sleep. Don't you care about me at all?" I sat with that one for a moment. Don't you care about me? 12 days on my credit card. Lobster dinners. Champagne. Designer bikinis. Living my best life. Don't you care about me? I listened to all 23 voicemails. I listened with the same careful attention I had been giving things for the past week. The same quality of focus I'd learned, I think, somewhere in the process of becoming the person who fixes things. The one who covers the water heater and the roof and the groceries and the Christmas and the $2,800. The person who figures it out. I applied that focus to 23 voicemails and I registered one fact with absolute clarity. Not once, in 23 messages, did anyone say sorry. Not once did anyone mention the $2,800. Not, "We shouldn't have done that." Not, "We went too far." Not, "We owe you." Not even the performative non-apology. "I'm sorry you feel that way," which would at least have acknowledged a wrong had occurred. It was all about them, their shock, their suffering, their homelessness, which, let me note, was a 30-day notice in a state with strong tenant protections and a family with resources sufficient to book a 12-day luxury cruise. Their victimhood, which had apparently sprung fully formed from the ground the moment the door wouldn't open, with no connection whatsoever to anything that had preceded it. I set my phone face down on the table. I finished my coffee. I picked it back up and typed a single message to the family group chat, the one with my mother, father, and sister, the one that had been mostly silent since I stopped responding to things 6 months ago. "You used my credit card without permission. I sold my property. Both were choices. Both have consequences." I sent it. Then I blocked my mother, then my father, then Brittany. I sat back in the chair. The apartment was quiet. The window was still open. Somewhere down the street, a dog was barking at something. One of those persistent, rhythmic barks that has given up on being heard and become purely habitual. My coffee was still warm. I thought about the first time I'd covered one of their bills. I was 23. My parents were between things. There was always a between things. And the electricity was going to be cut. I had $380 in my checking account, and I gave them $200 of it. I thought nothing of it. I thought, they're my parents. I thought, this is what you do. I did not think, this is the first payment on a debt that will never be acknowledged. I did not think, you are teaching them right now what you're worth. I wish I had thought those things. I was 23 and I loved them, and I wanted to be useful, and I thought that was the same as being valued. It is not the same thing. It is not even close to the same thing. In the weeks after, some people in my life, friends mostly, a few colleagues, had reactions to the story that surprised me. Not because they didn't understand why I'd done it, but because some of them had expected me to feel worse about it, to be haunted maybe, to lie awake running through the imagined image of my father at the front desk of a mid-range hotel at 10:30 on a Saturday night, bewildered. I'm going to be honest, I thought about that image. I allowed myself to look at it directly. My father, soft-voiced and lost, carrying his luggage into a hotel lobby because the floor had finally given way. I also thought about Patricia Hughes's voice when I called her. I've been waiting 3 years for this call. And I thought about David Coe's response when I forwarded him the residency declaration my mother had tried to upload to my property portal. He read it, cross-referenced state statute, and called me back within the hour. "She had no legal standing to file this," he said, in the measured tone of a man who has seen a great many things, but still occasionally encounters something that surprises him. "And the fact that she tried tells you something about where this was heading. It told me exactly where it was heading. It told me she had not been ignorant of what she was doing. It told me she had been building a case while I was covering roofs. The credit card dispute took 11 days to resolve. I provided Marcus at Chase, and subsequently his supervisor, a patient woman named Andrea who had 12 years in fraud and dispute resolution, with the documentation I'd assembled, the cruise booking confirmation showing the charge originated from the Maple Drive address, my mother's contact information which matched the account profile in Caribbean Cruise Lines' system, the photos from social media documenting the trip. Andrea told me this was one of the cleaner cases she'd seen. The charge was reversed. A fraud notation was placed on the account. She mentioned, with a certain professional neutrality, that the card company reserved the right to pursue the matter further. I did not ask her to elaborate on that. I filed a separate fraud report with the the local police department. I want to be precise about why. Not because I needed the money back, the dispute had handled that, and not entirely out of anger, though anger was present. I filed it because the residency declaration told me something about my mother's intention, and David Coe had told me something about my legal position, and the intersection of those two things told me that documentation existed for a reason. Officer Darnell Washington took my report. 12 years on the force, currently in financial crimes. He was methodical and thorough, and he did not offer commentary, which I respected. He told me I would receive a case number within 48 hours, and I did. Whether anything further comes of that, I genuinely don't know as I write this. That is not the point. The point is, the documentation exists. The point is that it is a matter of record. My friend Caroline, who had been listening to the Maple Drive situation for 2 years over dinners that got progressively grimmer as I relayed new developments, took me out for drinks the Saturday after I turned my phone back on. She is a social worker, 14 years in family services, and she has a way of analyzing situations that is both deeply empathetic and completely unsentimental. She listened to the whole sequence: the card, the call, the cruise photos, the voicemails, the sale, and she was quiet for a moment. "You know what's interesting?" she said finally. "You didn't blow anything up. They built the whole thing. You just stopped holding it together." I turned that over in my head for a while. I'm still turning it over, because she's right, and that's the part that I think people miss when they hear this story, and their first instinct is to ask whether I feel guilty. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't even change my family. Not fundamentally. Not in a way that surprised anyone who had been paying attention. What I changed was my own position within it. I stopped being the floor. I let the floor be what it actually was. What I lost in all of this, and I want to name this clearly, because I think the honest version of this story requires it, is the version of my family that existed in a compartment I had been maintaining at considerable personal expense. The version where my mother was difficult but loving, where my father was passive but present, where Brittany was irresponsible but would eventually grow out of it. I had been paying to maintain that version, financially and emotionally, for years. It had not been cheap, and I had been the only one paying. What I gained is the thing that is harder to describe. It's not triumph, exactly, though there were moments in the week after that felt like it. The Sunday morning, the eggs Benedict, the warm coffee, the phone turned off, and the sleep coming in like a wave. It's something quieter than triumph. It is the specific peace that arrives when you stop spending energy on a fiction. I moved the $240,000 into a high-yield account while I figured out what to do with it. I have been looking at a property in a different neighborhood. 2 units, solid bones, newer mechanicals, an investment. The kind of thing you do when you have some distance between yourself and the last investment. When you've learned something about what a lease is for and why you sign one. Patricia sent me a congratulations card, handwritten. She included a note that said she was glad the timing had worked out. I understood what she meant. Caroline checks in every few weeks. We've started meeting for coffee on Thursday mornings, which is a small thing and also not a small thing. It is the kind of relationship I had been too depleted to maintain properly for years. I sleep well, which sounds like a minor detail, and isn't. I have not heard from my mother, my father, or Brittany since I sent that last message and hit block. I don't know exactly where they are. I know from a mutual acquaintance that they found an apartment, smaller, a different part of town, presumably with an actual lease in someone's actual name. I know Brittany has a job now, which is something. I don't feel good about that the way I thought I might. I don't feel bad about it either. I feel about it the way you feel about the resolution of something that should have resolved a long time ago, like a storm that finally moved on. You don't celebrate the end of a storm. You just feel the pressure change, and you breathe.